Does anybody else find it a little bit strange how many people are talking about this Brock Purdy 49ers contract situation and basically saying there's no guarantee it's going to get done and that they're far apart and all these other things? It just seems interesting to me. This is a topic that I really stayed away from since the season ended, essentially. I mean, I have my thoughts on whether they should pay Brock Purdy. I've made those very clear, but I never thought that they wouldn't pay Brock Purdy. I just figured a deal would get done. And it probably still will. But everybody under the sun that reports on the 49ers locally has talked about, there's just no guarantees after what John Lynch had said. And I'm sure some of that is their inside information as well. But today, Adam Schefter also came out and said exactly that. He said, and it's funny because he used hypotheticals. He goes, well, let's just use a nice round number like $50 million, for example. The 49ers may say, hey, we want to give you a 3-year, $150 million deal. And Brock Purdy, of course, is going to want more years and more money. And so they're going to be far apart when it comes to that. But, the other option, Brock, is you can take your $5 million this year, your $41 million franchise tag next year, and your $51 million franchise tag the year after, and walk away in 3 years and be a free agent then and make your 97 million. Or you could walk away in 3 years and we can rework a deal, or you could go and be a free agent then, but you'd have $150 million. What do you want to do? That seemed a little weird, right? We're just using random round numbers and talking franchise tags. Like, it just seems like the 49ers are in a completely different headspace this offseason than what they've been in the whole entire Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch regime. It just seems like they're in no hurry to make long-term contracts a thing of the future. They're trying to figure things out. They're trying to get their bearings about them. And even the ones that they signed as of late, like Brandon Aiyuk, they're potentially willing to get out from under it if the deal is right. Matthew Berry, also worth noting, anybody who's followed him, he's a fantasy football guy. He's been around for a really long time on ESPN, and now he's on NBC. But he's the one that came out on Thursday or Friday and said, hey, just so you know, Deebo Samuel's most likely going to get traded to the Commanders, and it's going to happen in the next couple of days. Well, he got traded to the Commanders, and it happened within a day of him saying that. So he just put out an article with a bunch of notes. And one of those notes was talking about Brock Purdy as well. And he said, hey, just the things I'm hearing, there's no guarantee that a deal gets done. And as of now, the 49ers and Brock Purdy are far apart on what they believe is a fair deal. So take that for what it's worth. You got Matthew Berry. You got the local guys like Kawakami, Matt Mayoko. You've got John Lynch himself talking about how there's no guarantee. You've got now Adam Schefter also saying it. It just, everybody is flooding the market with the same exact message, which is there are no guarantees. And right now they're not close, but they'll continue to work at it. I thought if any deal was going to be quote unquote easy, this would have been the one. But, this is what the 49ers do. This is pretty much right on brand. But what's not on brand is the clear shift that they are trying to make during this offseason. And speaking of that, Brandon Aiyuk. So another note from Matthew Berry is that he found out when they were at the combine that the Patriots are desperate for a number one wide receiver for Drake May. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is because, and it sounds like they reached out on trying to get AJ Brown, but it doesn't sound like that went much of anywhere. The reason I'm going to bring that up is because the Patriots were one of the teams sniffing around on Brandon Aiyuk last offseason, if you remember. They were willing to pay more than what the 49ers gave him and potentially give up a first-round pick. Brandon Aiyuk didn't want to go there at that time. The 49ers didn't want to trade him at that time. Eventually, they came to a deal. But the Patriots were one of the teams that were reported being more than interested and ready to send over a hefty value and pay Brandon Aiyuk a hefty value. So a year later, coming off of injury, seems like, maybe you'd cool on that. But you start to look at the wide receiver market. T. Higgins doesn't look like he's going to hit the open market. Godwin looks like he might be returning to Tampa Bay. So there is no major receiver market for younger receivers that are potential number ones, which leads me to believe that they might be sniffing around the Brandon Aiyuk tree a little bit themselves. And maybe out of desperation, they'll be willing to give up a little bit more. I've been saying, hey, a fifth round pick for him, much like Debo, maybe they're willing to give a third that escalates to a two. Maybe as a part of that, the 49ers will have to eat some money. I don't know. But if one team, and all it takes is one, if they're desperate to get a true number one receiver and they feel that Brandon Aiyuk can still be that guy, remember, they were very interested last offseason. Now, it is a new regime. Who knows where their head's at? It does sound like, at the very least, they are desperate to get a good wide receiver in house. They haven't traditionally drafted that position with great accuracy rate, and they were very interested in Brandon Aiyuk last year. 49ers, for the right price, sound like they would be interested in moving off of Brandon Aiyuk. I think if there's a team to look out for, that would be the team that I would say potentially Brandon Aiyuk might end up in a Patriots uniform. Not saying anything is imminent, but just putting two and two together. Those are my thoughts. But yeah, the whole Brock Purdy thing, it's not going away. Seemingly it's not going away. So I figured I would talk about it, bring it to the light, and then Brandon Aiyuk. I think that situation is very fluid and very interesting and may stay that way for through the draft, basically, for the next month or so. We'll see.